Welcome and thank you for joining us on another episode of Inside the Story. I'm your host today, Isabelle Rosini. Today we are joined by Washington Times senior congressional reporter, Kerry Picket. Kerry, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm wondering today if we could talk about your article that you wrote recently on the pendulum swinging far back with the Democrats in terms of their messaging on the police. So as you write in your article, they're switching from defund to refund. So this is something we kind of, back in 2020 when all the we've had this kind of going on and off throughout past couple years, but in 2020 it was really heightened by the riots that started after the death of George Floyd. So I think it's interesting to talk about this 2 years after, because Republicans kind of early on caught on and were like, hey, this isn't going to end well. But now I think we're kind of seeing consensus on the left for that as well. So I'm just wondering if you could maybe, I know I just talked about a little bit, but if you could give us a context of kind of where this all started and when it kind of really picked up speed, the Defund the Police movement.
Right. Well, let's go back even a little farther here. Look, this type of thing with a crime and whatnot, this goes back decades and whatnot. Yeah. We see this in cycles very often. You can go a little more like sort of recent history where we see like in the 60s and the 70s where we saw crime rates go up, and then very often people would say, hey, we have to start cracking down on crime, and next thing, and very often it was like liberals who'd say, no, what about the victims' rights and so on and so forth, and it was always sort of like the pendulum going back and forth.
Yeah.
And one of the most recent history what we would see in the 90s with the crime bill, that was when you saw right after that reiteration happened that crime actually did sort of begin to subside. And a lot of people took issue with that crime bill. And I wouldn't say that it was the end all be all and that was the big solution to it, but actually in a number of cities, what you saw there was, police were able to get their hands free and they were able to do their jobs. District attorneys were actually prosecuting these criminals, actually locking them up because they did have these sentences that were actually being applied to these criminals. But what ended up happening was you ended up having a lot of this criminal justice reform sort of movement that ended up sort of coming through, because you'd hear very often things like, well, it's not right for someone just to be locked up for years on end just because they got caught with like a dime bag or something, which, honestly, people weren't getting locked up for 20 years on end because they got, busted for a dime bag. But like usually that was the argument you would hear. Right. And that's how it kind of inched up. Fast forward now. So people, began sort of loosening up the laws based off those types of arguments. And now, come 2014, what you ended up having like the Michael Brown, case where you had the situation over in Ferguson, where of course that you had a cop shooting there with Michael Brown, and you had the riots out there, and you had like that's where Black Lives Matter really made their mark. Before that, of course, there was a Trayvon Martin case over in Florida. So even though that wasn't necessarily police involved, the police were involved after the fact. So that was when the criminal justice reform movement really got in on everything. But what ended up happening, though, was that you had a lot of these George Soros sort of political types who were able to put some money into these DA races, these local DA races, and they were able to get their candidates in, and people who probably should have been defense attorneys ended up being prosecutors instead, and they ended up stopped prosecuting a lot of these really hardened criminals. So that's where we essentially are today, because they ended up getting these people into a number of these major cities. So essentially, they figured if you ended up seeing a lot of these people who, such as like these progressive types who would say, we want to defund the police and so on and so forth. You know, you had a lot of these progressive types up on Capitol Hill who would say they wanted to defund the police. The problem was that often hurt a number of lawmakers in 2020 up on Capitol Hill. It almost had them lose the House. So when they figured that out, they said, okay, well, you know what? It hurt us a lot. We almost lost the House over it. So now we had to figure out a way to sort of change the language a bit. Maybe reimagine, maybe sort of try and split the baby. The problem is, though, is that they're always sort of behind the ball on things.
Right, it seems more reactionary than proactive.
Have
in
you
this
noticed
case.
that?
Yeah, for sure.
Because here's the thing, is that they kind of found out that saying defunding the police hurts them. And now, but the thing is, though, what we're seeing is that not prosecuting criminals and the low morale of officers and the retention of and keeping officers on the beat and everything, that's what everyone's upset about. It's, you know, and they think, oh, we're just gonna throw money at the problem, and if we just put money into the American Rescue Plan, saying, oh, here, get a bunch of cops, do you really think that's going to help people? No, people are actually want people to prosecute these criminals. And what's going to happen is, more than likely, Democrats are going to lose badly at the polls come November. And what's going to happen? Next time around in 2024, they're going to go, we want people to actually prosecute these criminals, because they're going to have to catch up again. Yeah.
So you're saying they've kind of shifted the strategy, but I mean, it seems like it's a bit of, like you said, they're behind the ball on it, and it seems a shame that, I mean, so it seems that in major cities across the country, they've kind of been really badly hurt by Democrats' policies or lack of policies on crime and things, or on police as well. So how have we kind of seen those impacts? I think you had some numbers that you wrote about in your article. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Maybe like in New York City specifically. I know it seems like every day you see someone on Twitter, some like some figurehead who's like, I'm leaving New York. It's happening because this great exodus that kind of seems to be happening. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, like right now, I mean, in New York, they're at their lowest level of detectives in the last like 20 years or so.
That's crazy.
And that is absolutely insane. But but 9 U.S. cities, they've reported record homicide rates in the last year, and for the first time in decades, homicides in New York City crept toward 500, and the year in total was about 486 homicides. That's compared to 468 in 2020. In Chicago, police said a total of 797 people were killed last year. I mean, that's a 25 more than in 2020. Now that number hasn't been that high since 1996 when it reached 798. Males accounted for 88% of homicide deaths. That came from the medical examiner's office. Now, 86 homicide deaths were under 18, and 12 were under the age of 10.
That's awful.
Yeah. So when we're talking about more than likely stray bullets going into people's homes, yards, you hear about these awful stories about these children playing in the streets, or sometimes just hanging out in their homes and getting hit. Over in Los Angeles, they reported 397 homicides. That's an 11.8% spike from 355 in 2020, and a 53.9% increase from 258 in 2019. Now, the number of homicides hasn't been that high since 395 back in 2007. Now this is a kicker, by the way. According to FBI year-end statistics, 73 law enforcement officers died in the line of duty last year. Now, that doesn't include the 9/11 attacks, and that is the most killed since 1995. So, that's something to keep in mind, because, I went up to a few lawmakers up on the Hill trying to get them to talk about these DAs who don't prosecute. And they really don't want to talk, that's a local issue. And I try to say, well, I get it. It's a local issue, but this is happening in Democrat-led cities. Very often, the Democrats on Capitol Hill almost treat the cities in which their districts either are in or revolve around or their states. They treat the Democrats in their states as if it's a different Democratic Party, as if it's a different organization.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how they kind of treat that.
It is funny too, and it's funny how they're so eager to speak up when the political, when the politics are in their favor. Like, I mean, I think about like people like AOC who, pretty much like endorsed all the riots of summer of 2020, and then of course when there's this backlash and you're seeing these crazy spikes in homicides, they don't want to speak up anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's just like, that's when things are going horrendous in their cities, particularly in the Democrat-led cities. It's like they don't recognize their party. I've never heard of that party before. What is this party that you talk of? But if it's something that's going great in the cities that Democrats lead, it's like, oh yes, that's my Democrat party. Yes, that's a party that I came from.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's pretty shameful. But so just going back to New York, so Biden is meeting with Eric Adams on Thursday of this week, right? I think.
Oh no, it already happened.
It already happened.
Week.
Okay.
Yes, it already happened.
So what came of that? I mean, because Biden is someone who's been also been criticized as being soft on crime, at least in the current or in his current presidency. And Jen Psaki was defending. You mentioned was the CARES Act that had funding for police. So they were trying to come back with a rebuttal like, oh, actually, here's this, and this, where he's been smart on crime. But yeah, how did that meeting go? I know Eric Adams was a former police officer, so it seems like he would have leanings more toward being proactive about crime. And I'm wondering, have we kind of seen him take action in New York at all yet? But yeah, what can we kind of take away from that meeting that they had?
Well, you know what? Biden, who has been relatively quiet about crime and it's really hurt him in the polls.
Yeah.
He is zeroing in on this whole idea of gun control. Figures, we have to, it's all about the guns. It's all about gun violence, and Eric Adams is right on board with him with that whole issue, and he's doing this mainly because that is a big platform of the Democratic Party. The problem, though, once again, is it's a way of yet again not talking about the DAs, not talking about the issue of bail reform, which, by the way, Eric Adams is very frustrated about. He is trying to get the governor of New York to, as well as the supermajority of the Democrats in Albany, to try and change. But they don't want to talk about the issue of a cashless bail. They don't want to talk about the issue of the sentencing that goes on in New York. So basically, that was mainly just Biden going in there to say, "Hey, I'm dealing with the crime issue. I'm talking about gun control."
Yeah, a lot of posturing.
Yeah, exactly. It was mainly about saying, we're going to go in there and we're going to deal with people who are selling illegal guns, and we're going to crack down on these illegal gun sellers. There we go. Boom. Out. And he didn't even shake hands or talk to some of the families of the victims who were suffering over in New York. So that may not have gone as well as he may have hoped.
Yeah, I'm from the suburbs of Philadelphia, so I follow kind of what's going on in that city too, and that's another city that's been really
Larry Krasner.
Yeah, I mean, it's over Christmas. He was on TV. They were asking me, is it safe for holiday shoppers to come into the city? And I think the crime or the homicide, the murders had surpassed. I think what you were saying, New York's was close to 500. Philly's had surpassed 500. But I'm not sure what it ended at, but it was somewhere. It didn't reach 600, but it was still an incredibly high number in the 500s. And he was on TV. telling people, yeah, it's totally safe for people to come into the city and shop. It's just dishonest, and it's like you said, it's incredibly disrespectful to the families who have suffered, lost loved ones because of the policies. So yeah, it's shameful, and it's really bad.
Yeah, the people of Philadelphia really did try to see what they could do to vote D.A. Krasner out. Once again, he is a Soros-funded DA, and they're having a tough time doing it. Over in Los Angeles, there is George Gascon. He's also, once again, another Soros-funded DA. I spoke very briefly with Congressman Adam Schiff. His district includes Los Angeles. And when I asked him, I'm like, do you support the recall of DA Gascon? He said, I don't have time to talk. He just took off.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, so once again.
Yeah. So, Kerry, I know you mentioned this, but so, I mean, if you look at where Biden's kind of failing on the polls, you know, I'm not really up to date on like general, just like what, or approval ratings for like general issues for just the Democratic Party in general. But do you think this is going to be the big issue that, you know, really hurts Democrats in November, or is there something else that's kind of like leg and leg with it, or is this like the issue, or is it just like a bunch of issues together? What do you think about that?
I think it's attached to, you know, I think it's up there. As far as I know, I think it's number 2.
Okay.
I think inflation is definitely number 1. Because you know, but the thing is though, is that it's like anything else. When people's pocketbooks are kind of struggling, then sometimes, you know, certain people who get desperate do desperate things. So one does sort of attach to the other as far as crime is concerned. So, you know, then there's also the issue of these mandates. That's definitely there, as well as to, you know, whether or not you know, these states are going to be dropping more of their mask mandates, and whether these vaccine mandates are going to be dropped, as far as some of the detailed stuff. So I think it has a lot to do with it, but of course we're still early on in the campaign right now. Anything can happen.
Yeah, we'll have to see, also like follow that strategy to see where exactly their messaging lands. So I think that'll be interesting to follow. Yeah, but Kerry, I think that's probably all the time we have for today, but just thanks so much for coming on and informing us on this very important issue.
Sure thing.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too.